Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to try to wrap up this first part of nutrition and move into metabolism. And before we go into that, does anybody have any questions on anything? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Okay, so everybody should see the screen that says fat substitutes now. So we're talking about fats. And we're talking about the risk problems with fats in the diet. I think we talked about mad cow disease and things like that. We talked about the problems of excessive fats causing accumulation. A diet high in fat creates a risk of coronary artery disease and cerebral artery disease in the brain by obstructing arteries with fatty deposits. Mad cow disease is not related to anything like this, but mad cow disease is associated with eating organs, and organs are, besides the fat in there, it makes them taste good. And there's always a problem involved with that. So we prefer not to do that. Now, let's move on and talk about fat substitutes. So if we're trying to stay healthy, we want to eat less fat. Well, there's a problem with reducing the fat content, of course, in our diet, because if we're eating a balanced diet and we're taking in within the range of fat that we're supposed to, or that our bodies need, there's, cutting back has no benefit. In fact, cutting back on fat, trying to eliminate fat from our diet is actually dangerous. Eliminating fat completely. And the whole food industry focused on fat as evil. Let's reduce fat in our products and make it healthier. And so when they do that, they end up, many times, if the fat's taken out, then something else has to go in. Something else that goes in may add calories. So are you trading off carbohydrates for fats? Well, it turns out that most nutritionists will tell you that if you're trying to counsel your patients for weight loss, it isn't so much the fats they consume, it's the carbohydrates. Excessive carbohydrates leads to increased fat deposition, which leads to hypertension and heart disease and obesity and diabetes and all the other issues that go along with that. But the whole approach of the nutrition, of the diet, of the food industry has been to say we are fat-free. Many products that advertise themselves as fat-free have always been fat-free. Many products like peanut butter that advertise as cholesterol-free were always cholesterol-free. So I think instead of focusing on the reduction of carbs in certain processed foods, the food industry took out the fat. And not that it, excessive fat is unhealthy, but I think that they missed the point. So we are heavily interested, the public at large is very interested in products that are fat-free or reduced fat. That always gets somebody's attention. We avoid dairy, we avoid whole milk and drink skim milk, or 1% or 2%. Or, those numbers mean something. Whole milk is only 4% fat to begin with. So to get the benefit of going from whole milk to skim milk is only a reduction of fat intake by 4%. So it's not a lot of improvement there. Certain foods are made to appear more pleasing by modifying the fats. And why do we like fat in our food to begin with? Fat makes our food taste better. Fat acts as a lubricant to enable the food in our mouth. It's a pretty disgusting sound, like it's a lubricant, but it is. It allows food to be smoother and creamier and more pleasant, have a more pleasant sensation in our mouth. It allows the food in our mouth to expose itself to all of the, or come in contact with all of our taste buds, so we enjoy the flavors better. It's much creamier, much more palatable. Ice cream with high butter fat is much tastier or much more desirable to eat, than ice cream that has low butter fat. The premium ice cream that they sell at any food store, even their house brand, if it says premium, that's a standard. It's a standard of a certain level of butter fat over regular ice cream. It doesn't say premium. It doesn't have, the premium is not just an advertising term. It actually means something. Premium ice cream has a higher butterfat content. It's in the same nature as the stuff we find from Baskin Robbins or Marble Slab or any of the other upper end ice cream vendors. It tastes better, whether it's a Kroger house brand or the Walmart house brand, or Breyers or any of the other Ben and Jerry's or any of the other premium, what we would consider a premium ice cream out there. So we like fat in our food. Now, the earliest attempts at putting, but we don't like to have a lot of fat in our food. We want it both ways. We want the food to taste really good and be creamy and delicious, and yet we don't want to have a lot of fat. So the very first fat substitute was air. You whip air into food and you make into certain types of foods, and it becomes lighter and fluffier. Whipped cream can be made very easily at home by taking heavy cream, that you buy it in the dairy section, like Food City, and whip that together with a mixer, and maybe a little vanilla flavoring, maybe a touch of sugar. I don't even know how my wife makes it, but homemade whipped cream. Essentially the same product that would come out of one of those little Ready Whip cans that you squirt out. Completely different than Cool Whip. Cool Whip is a chemicals synthetic whipped cream that has flavor and texture appropriate to it by the use of various chemicals in there. It is also very low in calories and low in fat. The fat content of Ready Whip is very low because what you're doing is you're injecting air in among the fat molecules and it fluffs up. The same thing happens when you take heavy cream, which has got a higher fat percentage, but then you whip it together. So a quarter cup of heavy cream fills up a whole bowl of whipped cream. And so the fat content is very low. So mixing air in works very well on some things. Other products are added to foods in lieu of fats, in place of fats, to make them taste better or creamier. Things like starches or gums, not like chewing gum, but there's, gums from, is a type of sticky substance from plants. Proteins, there's a lot of seaweed extract in ice cream, for example. Carrageenan, and it comes from seaweed, and it gives the ice cream better texture in here. The only thing wrong with all of these modified products is that they add more calories. They reduce the fat, but add more calories. So there's a trade-off there, because you got to have, if you're taking fat out of a recipe, the fat was there for a purpose, to hold the substance together, to give it flavor, to give it texture. You have to do something else. You can't make biscuits without some sort of shortening agent in there to make the biscuit flaky. You can't make a pie crust without some sort of shortening agent, because that's what Crisco shortening or lard does. It causes the crust to become layers of the dough separate into very thin sheets, and it becomes very flaky and very palatable, very tasty. Otherwise, without any kind of fat in a dough mixture, you end up with a hockey puck. Well, the food industry is very concerned about fat, because they see which way the public believes. And so, like Frito-Lay, about 20 or so years ago, developed a synthetic fat. It was the first successful synthetic fat. It was called a sucrose polyester. It was a sucrose molecule that had been twisted in opposite directions than it normally goes. Those chemical molecules have both, the shape of the molecule is very specific. They can either bend to the left or bend to the right. They have a cis or a trans version of here on the molecule. And when you change the direction of the way the molecule bends, it alters what its properties are. And so this sucrose polyester, chain of sucrose molecules linked together, not being metabolized, not broken down like sucrose, table sugar normally would. It wasn't absorbed because it didn't break apart right, didn't metabolize correctly, but it was used as a synthetic fat. And the trade name's called Olestra. Frito-Lay, the big chip company, marketed their product as wow, potato chips with the same flavor and texture, but fat-free. And so the belief was that if they could sell potato chips and corn chips and all the other snacks that Frito-Lay makes, and the fat content was zero, that they would have even greater sales on that. And since the synthetic fat wasn't absorbed, so there were no extra calories from it. The sucrose polyester, not absorbed. The problem was, and see, here's the label, fat-free, half the calories. This was, from a marketing perspective, it was a brilliant idea, except, and this is why we don't see a lot of these products out in the market anymore, except in 30% of the population, Olestra really lived up to its wow name, because it would cause uncontrolled explosive diarrhea. As we see what happened to this individual right here. Uncontrolled explosive diarrhea. No warning, suddenly the victim's bowels would go into spasm and empty. A lot of cramping, as I say. The warning label says may cause abdominal cramping and loose stools, as well as inhibiting the absorption of certain fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. Which are the fat-soluble vitamins. 30% of the population had some real powerful discomfort here from Olestra. Now, as far as I know, Olestra is still marketed. Pringles. There are a variety of Pringles, at least there were a couple of years ago. I was in Kroger's, and they had the Olestra products all collected in one location. Mostly Pringles, and some, I think there were some chips. Now, I haven't seen them lately. I was in Food City yesterday, and they had no Olestra Pringles there. But Last time I looked in Kroger's a couple of years ago, they were still selling them. Now, I don't know if they phased them out or not, but when 30% of your population has uncontrolled explosive diarrhea just because they ate your potato chips, that's a sign we probably need to take it off the market, or at least reduce it. And that pretty much destroyed this synthetic or sucrose polyester artificial fat. The other problem with it, besides all of that, was that you couldn't cook with it. It would break down above 300 degrees. You need higher temperatures than that to fry foods with, to fry seafood, to fry French fries, and anything that you're going to fry, you have to have higher temperatures than 300. So didn't work at all. Recently, in the past 5 years, 10 years maybe, air fryers have really come into vogue, and they sort of have replaced the need for a lot of these synthetic fats, at least in home use, because an air fryer, instead of taking a quart of cooking oil to fry French fries or shrimp or whatever you're frying, you use a teaspoon of oil, and the air fryer blows the oil into the oil is reduced to its smallest molecular component and is blown around all the food, and it coats the surface and it fries it that way. And you're only using a teaspoon or a tablespoon of oil to get the same flavor and approach. So you reduce the oil that you're using by about 99%, and the calorie content goes way down. So you can eat French fries or fried shrimp or anything like that and not have the added oil content in here. So, but again, it comes down to how much fried food do you eat. So now you know that the fast food restaurants still maintain their fryers. Now, are they going to change? Probably when it becomes economically feasible for them to do that. But right now, I haven't been inside a McDonald's for at least 2 years, drive-through, pretty much only. So it just, it's hard to make a synthetic fat that works. So, and this is the consequence. It sounds funny now, but I know people that experience this phenomenon, and that's where the phrase, well, it certainly does live up to its name of wow, because of the feeling you have when everything's empty. So, okay, that's enough of the fats. Let's talk about proteins. We've gone through carbohydrates and the lipids. Let's take a look at the proteins. Proteins. We need proteins so that we can make amino acids. We don't make all the amino acids that we need. We have 20 amino acids that we have to have for protein synthesis. We talked about that at the end of the cell chapter. We got to have proteins. We eat proteins, we break them down to their component amino acids, and then we take those amino acids and we rearrange them in the order that we need to make the proteins that we want. We get them from both plant and animal sources. Animal sources of protein give us what we call complete proteins. Complete proteins have all 20 amino acids. All 20 amino acids, because our bodies don't make all 20 amino acids. There are about 8 amino acids that we cannot make. We have to get them in our diet. And eggs give them to us, and fish and milk and beef and poultry and pork. All of these sources give us complete proteins. Incomplete proteins are found in plant sources. Legumes, the beans and peas, have proteins, but not all 20 amino acids. Nuts are full of protein, But again, not all 20 amino acids. The same with the cereal grains, the corn, the wheat, the rice, the oats. They're all incomplete proteins. So all plant sources are incomplete. If you combine, though, certain types of plant proteins together, you will get all 20 amino acids, including the essential amino acids that are missing, that our body can't make. For example, legumes, beans, and cereal grains, beans and rice. That combination gives you everything you need. Corn and beans gives you all 20 of the amino acids. It includes the essential amino acids that are missing from our bodies. Just a simple combination of two different plant groups gives us everything we need. So while complete proteins, all are from animal sources, incomplete proteins from plant sources, okay, but there's a very, very palatable workaround there. Beans and rice, very good combination. Corn and beans, very good combination in here. What do we use proteins for? Well, both structural and functional purposes. Structurally, collagen fibers. Most abundant protein in our body, collagen, functions as ligaments and tendons. It gives strength. It wraps around bone. It makes bones even stronger. It attaches muscles to bones. We have elastin, makes our skin elastic, and the walls of the blood vessels elastic. The muscle proteins that enable us to have contractions in skeletal muscle and smooth muscle and cardiac muscle. The microfilaments in here of protein that enable this to work. Waterproofing, the keratin, again, structurally, the stuff that's in our skin, it makes our skin water resistant. It makes our nails, it's in our hair. This is all water resistant material. And again, they are structure. Functional are the enzymes, the squishy globular proteins, the enzymes, the antibodies, the hormones, the protein hormones. They're all squishy little globular structures here, very sensitive to changes in temperature and pH. And we use enzymes to make chemical reactions go faster. We use hormones as chemical messengers, for example. So proteins are absolutely essential to our bodies. Now, how much protein do we need on a daily basis? Well, you could try and do the math of 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, or you could just say, well, it's about 50 grams a day per person. 50 grams of protein a day. So how much is 50 grams? Well, a 4-ounce serving of meat, beef, chicken, or poultry, will give you 50 grams. The average serving size is of any component of a meal is about 4 ounces. That's why quarter pounders are called quarter pounders, because 4 ounces is a quarter of a pound. When you go to a restaurant and they serve your plate and serve your meal, the proportion, the size of each individual serving is about 4 ounces. So if you get chicken or fish or steak, it's about 4 ounces more or less of there. So we say about 4 ounces of a complete protein, for example, would give you 50 grams. A Whopper or a quarter pounder are somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 grams, depending on if it's or maybe a Big Mac or a double Whopper will give you about 50 grams if we're going to go that way. Or a 4-ounce piece of beef, or a 4-ounce a chicken breast or fish or something like that is going to give you your 50 grams. So it's just sort of a general rule of thumb that it's about, 50 grams. So, so don't try and do the math. It's just a whole lot easier that the average is about 50 grams here. Yeah. A couple requirements here with these amino acids. We know we need amino acids. We need the all 20 amino acids to make proteins. We have an all or none rule that all the amino acids needed have got to be present or we won't make the protein. The protein will not get formed if there's an amino acid missing. So that's why those essential amino acids have to be there. So the all or none rule applies in protein synthesis. Also, we know that just like we can break down fat to get glucose, and we break down carbohydrates to use glucose, we can break down fats and convert them to glucose through gluconeogenesis. We can do the same thing to proteins. We can go without food for about a month, about 30 days. To survive, our body will consume all the fats in our bodies. Then it will start going, it will burn through all the carbohydrates. Then it will start going through all of the fats. And once the carbohydrates and fats have been exhausted, then it will start going after protein and start seeing a reduction in muscle mass. The muscle cells aren't destroyed. They're just going to start shrinking. Muscle cells get bigger when we add more protein to them. Muscle cells shrink when we remove protein from them. And so we can go back and forth. A person that exercises vigorously will see their muscles get bigger as long as they're also adding protein to their diet, because that's how muscle cells enlarge, by adding more protein. So another term here that's important about proteins is something called nitrogen balance. Amino acids are made of, among other things, ammonia, an NH group, an ammonia group, or an amine group. That's why they're called amino acids. It's nitrogen and a couple of hydrogens hanging on to it. So we like to keep the amount of nitrogen present in balance. What that means is that as rapidly as, let me start over. The pace of protein synthesis is matched by the breakdown of proteins, because proteins wear out. We lose proteins when we shed, skin cells. As the keratin and the elastin in the cells, and maybe the collagen are gone too. So we have to keep replacing that protein. So cells wear out, cells are lost, cells shrink, cells expand. The breakdown of protein in our bodies is matched by the buildup of protein. So we have a net zero. We are in balance. Nitrogen balance means that the rate of buildup is matched by the rate of breakdown, or the breakdown is matched by buildup. So we don't have, we're at what we call a zero sum. There is no change in our nitrogen levels. We're balanced. We can have a positive nitrogen balance if protein synthesis is exceeding breakdown. Now that's perfectly normal in children, because children are growing. We've discovered that if you feed children, they will grow. And so nitrogen balance is positive in children because they're growing. Children go through phases. We all go through our rapid growth phases in adolescence, and then it tails off and pretty much stops after we become an adult. Now, we will always be making proteins, throughout our lifetime, because we're always undergoing maintenance and repair and growth. We grow new skin cells, we grow new bone cells, we wrap proteins around the bone, we enlarge our muscle cells, we shrink our muscle cells. So we're always going to be making proteins and breaking down proteins. We like to stay, once we reach our adult stature and adult, size, whatever, we're going to we like to stay in balance. But up until the time that we've stopped growing, once we've reached our adult stature, we tend to be in a positive balance because we're always making more than we tear down. However, you can have a patient in negative balance too. In negative balance, they are breaking down protein faster than they're building it up. Now, there's a variety of causes there. Injuries, burns in particular, severe burns, third-degree burns, a lot of blunt force trauma or significant tissue damage, infections can lead to a negative balance. You're not building up your protein as fast as you're tearing it down. So all of these conditions here, stress and burns, infection, injury, nutrition. Also, you see this a lot in your older patients that may or may have may be experiencing malnutrition. Now, malnutrition works both ways. Malnutrition, when we think of malnutrition, we think of people that are starving and undernourished and stuff like that. But malnutrition also works the other way, where you have your obese patient who is emphasizing a lot of carbohydrates and fats in their diet, and not a lot of protein. So it works both ways. Negative balance can occur from malnutrition. Many older people, on fixed incomes, don't always buy the foods or purchase the foods they need that are high in protein, because it turns out that protein is the most expensive of the major nutrients. It is more expensive to buy protein than it is to buy carbohydrates or fats. It's much less expensive to buy a box of spaghetti or a box of macaroni than it is to buy beef or chicken or fish, or even dairy. So if nutrition is based on income, and it is for many people, then if you're focused on the cost as opposed to what if you focus on what you can afford as opposed to what your body needs, a lot of times people become in negative balance because they're malnourished. The last point here are the role of hormones that trigger protein synthesis. The anabolic hormones. Anabolic hormones are what we call the anabolic steroids, for example, simply work by stimulating protein synthesis. Anabolic reactions build large molecules from small ones. That's what they do. And they store energy. Growth hormone stimulates growth, obviously. We release a lot of growth hormone when we hit puberty, and we go through our growth spurts up through adolescence. And so we see this growth, and we see bone enlargement, we see muscle enlargement, we see bones lengthening, our body changes. The growth hormone is behind a lot of that. That is a protein hormone that which triggers a lot, it causes an increase in protein synthesis. The sex hormones drive this also. Testosterone and estrogen now they are steroid-based hormones, but they are going to drive, in addition to the protein-based growth hormone, the sex hormones are going to drive this changes in our body stature. They're going they're going to be pushing for the secondary sex characteristics that occur in us during puberty as we go into our ultimate body stature. That's also going to drive protein synthesis. So these steroid hormones and these protein hormones are, growth hormone is a protein-based hormone. The sex hormones are steroid-based. They're going to drive, they're going to push, they're going to really push the protein synthesis because of all the proteins we need as we grow. Now, this slide, which probably should have been in front of the previous one, this shows the difference between complete and incomplete proteins. These are all incomplete proteins here. Now you can see there's an ear of corn and there are some bean pods. Now over here we see a list of proteins. A list of amino acids. These are the essential amino acids that our body doesn't make. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, these are in infants. So there's 8, essentially, there are 8 amino acids that our bodies need that we don't make on our own. Now, corn, if a piece of beef or a piece of chicken or a dairy product, piece of cheese, will give you all of these without a problem because they're, animal protein is a complete protein. Plant proteins are incomplete. However, if you mix and match, like corn gives you tryptophan, methionine, valine, threonine, phenylalanine, and leucine. That's part of what we have here. Tryptophan, methionine, valine, threonine, phenylalanine, and leucine. Corn doesn't give you isoleucine or lysine. Beans give you valine, threonine, phenylalanine, leucine, isoleucine, and lysine. So between the two of these, beans and corn, you get all 8 essential amino acids, the ones that our bodies don't make on their own, the ones we have to get from our diet, simply by combining beans and corn, beans and rice, peas and rice, cereal grains and legumes will give you all the amino acids that your body needs. So your patients that are vegetarian or vegan have to spend a little more effort, make sure they get the right amount of protein because they need their amino acids. Everybody needs all 20 of the amino acids. And if your diet is plant-based, then a little selective mixing and matching has to happen. And it's an interesting side note that societies that have these kind of diets that are more plant-based diets, like the beans and rice diet, are much healthier overall than a diet that is heavy on animal protein and very light on plant protein. The occurrence in many societies that are driven off of plant-based protein have less occurrences of heart disease and obesity and high blood pressure and diabetes than societies that are heavy on animal protein and light on plant protein. So anyway, just a little statistical point. So now those are the three major nutrients: carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. We know that each one plays a role for us in our bodies. We also know that all 3 of them give us glucose. Carbohydrates can break down and give us glucose. Fats can be broken down, and proteins can be broken down through gluconeogenesis to provide the glucose we need for energy. Because it won't do us a lot of good to have all these great proteins here, these great fats here, if we don't have the energy for our bodies to function. Okay, so here's the first of the minor nutrients that we look at. That's vitamins. Vitamins are coenzymes, usually. A coenzyme is a molecule that assists an enzyme in its action. It's not a wannabe enzyme. It's not an assistant enzyme. It's not an enzyme, it's not a pre-enzyme or anything like that. It sort of plugs into the enzyme and it helps the enzyme do its job. Now, most of the vitamins we take, most of the vitamins in our bodies, we end up getting through our diet, or we take supplements like we see here. We take multivitamins to get everything we need. Most vitamins though, whether they show up in our food or show up as, vitamin supplements. Some we make. Vitamin D allows us to absorb calcium in our small intestine so that we can use that calcium for bones and for muscle contractions and for nerve impulses. Vitamin D is made in our skin. Ultraviolet radiation, sunlight, striking our skin will stimulate the production of vitamin D in our skin. And that vitamin D, when activated, will enable our small intestine to absorb high amounts of calcium, which we need for a variety of reasons. Vitamin K and some vitamin Bs are made in our large intestine, in our colon, in the gut. Vitamin K in particular is made by bacteria that are metabolizing the indigestible portion of our food that's in our colon that's being converted to feces. They metabolize that, and those bacteria produce vitamin K. Vitamin K is essential to keep our blood, or give our blood the ability to coagulate when necessary. The ability to form a blood clot to stop bleeding is a result. It comes from vitamin K. So we like vitamin K. We like us to make vitamin K because who likes to bleed? So we produce this all the time. Now, the other one that we get, where our body actually makes it. Does vitamin K form scabs? Not that I'm aware of, but it might. Let me look that. I'll have to write that one down and look it up. Vitamin K and scabs. It might. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll look it up. It's possible because they do form. They're the driver to form the clot. The clot is made up of the protein fibrin, driven by the vitamin K. Vitamin K allows that to happen, or is involved in the clotting process. We'll talk all about that in AP2. That one I'll look up for you, but right now I don't know. If I don't know, I won't try and pretend like I do. So I don't know. Now here's another one. How many of you ever eaten carrots when you were a kid and you were told eat your carrots, they're good for your eyes? Or you've never seen a blind rabbit or something along those lines. Rabbits have great vision, they eat carrots all the time. Well, rabbits don't really eat a lot of carrots, they eat all sorts of stuff. But we probably all were told at one point, eat carrots, they're good for your eyes. And it isn't necessarily the carrot, it's the compound in the carrot that makes the carrot orange. And that is called a substance known as beta carotene. Beta carotene is an orange pigment. And it shows up in orange juice, in oranges, it shows up in carrots. Any orange type of sweet potatoes are a great source of beta carotene. Our bodies will convert beta carotene to vitamin A. Vitamin A is used by the retina of our eyes. Vitamin A enables the photoreceptors on our retina to improve our vision, particularly at night. Our night vision improves when we have when we maintain adequate vitamin A levels. A person who has poor night vision uh, may be advised to eat foods higher in vitamin K. If you don't like carrots, eat sweet potatoes, or drink juices that are high in beta carotene. Like orange juice, or even Sunny D is high in beta carotene. So our bodies convert that to vitamin A. There is no one food source, though, that is all vitamins. We have to, again, we have to eat different things. A vitamin C comes from, oranges and lemons and various fruits. Vitamin D comes from the sun, or it comes from dairy products. Vitamin D in dairy products has been added in. Vitamin D doesn't occur naturally in milk. It's usually added to milk. So, when we say that probably didn't occur till about 70 years ago or so. Vitamin D was added to milk. And so, enriched milk. It was a way to get children to get more vitamin D, because vitamin D enables them to absorb the calcium that's in the milk. So anyway, there is no one magic source that contains all the vitamins. Now, vitamins themselves are either going to be water soluble or fat soluble. The water solubles are the B complex vitamins and vitamin C. They are water soluble, so they can be absorbed in water. When we ingest water, we get the vitamins, the water soluble vitamins in there. B12 can be absorbed, but it's not going to go anywhere unless there is a compound known as intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is produced in our stomach, and intrinsic factor allows us to absorb B12. B12 is what we use to make red blood cells. You've got to have red blood cells. Very oxygen. There is a condition known as pernicious anemia that is caused by an absence of intrinsic factor. Without intrinsic factor, we can't absorb vitamin B12, and we can't make red cells. Now, the problem with water, I guess you could consider it a problem, is that water-soluble vitamins are not stored in the body. Water-soluble vitamins are going to be used and then excreted. So you take a multivitamin, and all the water-soluble vitamins in there are going to be used in that first hour. And whatever is not used is going to be excreted in urine right away. Mega doses of water-soluble vitamins do nothing for an individual. It was thought for years that mega doses of vitamin C would prevent the onset of a cold. Well, a cold is caused by a variety of viruses that affect the nasal cavity or the oral cavity. So we've all had colds. We call them a head cold, whatever. And the thought was, if you took mega doses of vitamin C, you would prevent that. I mean, extra large doses of vitamin C, well, it doesn't do anything. The more vitamin C you take, the more you're going to pee it down the drain, literally. We can't store vitamin C. We can't store the B vitamins either. They come in, they're used, and what's left over that isn't used is lost. So it doesn't hurt us to take mega doses, but it's not doing us any good. And there was quite a lot of research being done in the 1960s and 1970s, and even into the early 2000s about mega doses of vitamins. Even now, you still see advertising that says, "Boost your immune system with mega doses of blah blah," C or B or something like that. Doesn't do that. Our bodies will only use what they need and get rid of the rest. Now, the fat solubles are a little different. The fat soluble vitamins pass right across the cell membrane very easily because they dissolve in fat. Fat goes across cell membranes. The problem with fat soluble vitamins is they can be stored. and they can accumulate. And so larger doses of fat-soluble vitamins are not beneficial. Vitamin A, excessive amounts of vitamin A, you can, when you're told eat carrots, eat lots of carrots, it helps your eyesight. Well, it does to a point. Eating carrots will, yes, improve your eyesight. If your eyesight is poor, definitely, it's not going to improve problems with the lens, but it will help the retina. It will improve night vision. If your problem is poor night vision, it will improve the photoreceptors that deal with dim light. And and so it'll improve that, but it will improve it, by taking doses of vitamin A or beta carotene, it will improve everything to a point, and then whatever you add to it after that doesn't do any good. Like if 1 carrot's good, 2 carrots might not be necessary. 3 carrots is overkill. I'm going to have 4 sweet potatoes at supper. Well, that's great, except all that beta carotene is not going to help and make any more improvement. But you store it. You store the vitamin A. You store extra vitamin D. Vitamin D allows you to absorb calcium in your small intestine. The more vitamin D you have, the more calcium you're going to retain. There is a condition known as hypercalcemia, which can be very dangerous. High levels of calcium alter the ability of the heart to contract properly. High levels of calcium, on a more mundane scale, can cause kidney stones. That's what kidney stones are. They're crystals of calcium that form in the kidneys. High levels of calcium in the blood can affect that. All that calcium that you're retaining isn't all going to go into our bones, like we think it will. If some calcium's good, a lot more is dangerous. Muscle cells and nerve cells require a set amount of calcium, but not a hypercalcemic state. We'll talk all about that when we get into AP2. So if some is good there, more is definitely not better. Yeah, B and C are the only ones that don't cause problems, because we don't keep them around. They're water soluble. So if you take excessive amounts of B and C, doesn't matter. Our cells will use what they need, and the rest are going to be lost because they're not stored. There isn't a place for them to be stored. It doesn't. There is no added benefit by taking large amounts. Not going to hurt, other than maybe spending a lot of money on excessive amounts of vitamins, of the C's and the B's. So, good question. Yeah. It's I think lots of people still believe that mega doses of vitamin C will make them healthier, and it doesn't. It ensures that the cells will have all the vitamin C that they want, but whatever they're not using, which is a lot of it, they're not going to use. It's going to just get down the drain. The problem with vitamin E, oops, let me this. Vitamin E is sort of the counterpart to vitamin K. Vitamin E works almost like a blood thinner. Now, later on, we'll use the proper term, an anticoagulant. But vitamin E can work as a blood thinner, and large doses of vitamin E can actually make a person more prone to bleed, to not clot. An anticoagulant, what we call, when we use the term blood thinner, we're actually talking about something that's an anticoagulant, preventing clotting. So a person that's taking mega doses of vitamin E, because vitamin E is supposed to be good for us, vitamin E will, in mega doses, prevents clotting. And so your patient that takes large doses of vitamin E, if they get injured, they may bleed profusely and we have a much more challenging time getting it to stop. And that's never good. This is what happens when your patients medicate themselves and don't tell you. In healthcare, some patients have this belief that the healthcare provider automatically knows everything about them without having to say it. And to some extent, you can tell an awful lot just by looking at your patient and looking at their skin. There are a lot of visual cues, but some things you don't know. You don't know that someone's taking mega doses of vitamin E. If your patient's taking an anticoagulant drug already because of a clotting disorder, and then they're taking mega doses of vitamin D, they are severely anticoagulating themselves. In technical terms, they're very squishy and they bleed very, very easily, and they might not be able to get that bleeding stopped. So these are the kind of health issues that we run into. Now, vitamin K, we generally don't take a lot of vitamin K, but vitamin K does sneak into our diet in a lot of leafy green vegetables like spinach and kale and Kraft mayonnaise. Kraft mayonnaise is high in vitamin K for whatever reason. I don't know why, but it's high in vitamin K, and excessive amounts of vitamin K can increase our ability to clot. And if your patient has a clotting disorder already where they clot more easily, the last thing they want to be eating is some food something that's trying to cause that to enhance that clotting disorder and make them clot even more frequently, like Kraft mayonnaise and a big spinach salad raises their levels of vitamin K. So again, we have to be very careful. Your patient with a clotting disorder, just often as an aside here, and we'll talk a lot about this in AP2, the patient with a clotting disorder doesn't need to be eating foods that are high in vitamin K or taking vitamin K vitamins, enriched vitamins, unless they're taking some sort of anticoagulant to neutralize that. Or there are many anticoagulants that are sold now that are available that are not interfered with by vitamin K. So a person with a clotting disorder that would normally have to avoid leafy greens and stuff like that with vitamin K in it can eat anything they want. But that's only been in about the past 5 years or so. Okay. Now, one of the other benefits of vitamins is that they destroy free radicals. Now, we know what free radicals are. We talked about them in peroxisomes, but a free radical is essentially a molecule that has a charge on it that it shouldn't have. Like the OH group from water, hydrogen and oxygen and hydrogen, H2O is water. Water breaks along the lines of a hydrogen atom and the OH molecule. The OH molecule is usually negatively charged and the hydrogen molecule is usually positive charged. But what happens if the OH portion of the water molecule becomes positive? It shouldn't be positive, but it is positive. What happens if a sodium ion, instead of being positive, becomes negative? Those are free radicals, and they tend to move through the cells and through tissues, damaging healthy tissues, breaking apart normal functioning molecules. And the presence of free radicals may lead to cells becoming cancerous, among other things. So we like to eat foods that are high in vitamin C and E and A and selenium as a mineral, because they function as antioxidants. Not excessive consumption, but as part of every routine diet to have vitamin C and E and A in the diet. And you eat a sweet potato once a week, or carrots once a week, or a salad every day or every other day. And, you have the leafy green salad, you have a spinach salad, you have lettuce. These are going to provide antioxidants. The antioxidants break apart the free radicals, because what the free radical does is trigger oxidation in a cell. Now, when oxidation reactions occur in a cell, the cell is breaking apart structures and releasing electrons, releasing energy. And that energy, that random release of energy, can damage the cell. That's where we get the damage here. Oxidation always involves the release of energy and the release of electrons. When you light a candle, that's oxidation. You're releasing electrons, you're releasing energy, heat and light. But we don't see heat and light. We may see heat, but not light coming off in our bodies. Antioxidants neutralize these free radicals. The sodium with the wrong charge, the OH group from a water molecule with the wrong charge. These free radicals are neutralized by our vitamins as antioxidants, particularly the ones that can give us vitamin A and C, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, romaine lettuce, spinach, kale. All of these things can be very useful. All these different food items can be very useful in functioning as an antioxidant. You get the same benefit by taking a multivitamin every day too. So we have to work very hard to end up taking mega doses of a vitamin. If you eat a normal diet with greens and vegetables and whatever, whether or not you eat meat or not, but if you have as we say, a balanced diet and take a multivitamin, you're not going to be overdosing on vitamins. You're not going to have mega doses. Mega doses are thousands of times more. The vitamin load is thousands of times more than the recommended daily amount, which is always specified in the bottle. Most of those gummy vitamins, like I showed you back here, like these, the dose is usually 2 of those a day. That's the adult dose. Anyway, so a balanced diet and a multivitamin, multivitamins on a daily basis are going to keep everybody, in homeostasis. There we go. I got to use that word today. In homeostasis with our body's needs, but not overdosing it. Because people do funny things. People will do strange things. I used to work with a woman in a previous life, and we shared an office. And she had this obsessive compulsion about calcium. I always suspected she had a condition known as pica, where there's this unusual craving for certain minerals. She would consume a large bottle of Tums, fruit-flavored Tums, every day. And for those of you that are not familiar with that, Tums are an antacid, a acid reflux medication. It's mostly calcium carbonate, same stuff that's in chalk. For years, Tums was sold as an acid reducer because it neutralizes it. When it hits stomach acid, which is hydrochloric acid, the calcium carbonate functions as a base and neutralizes the acid. It's one of the very early medications for treating reflux. It was there before we called it reflux, back when we called it heartburn or acid indigestion. In the olden days, when we worked on our computer by candlelight. So this woman I worked with, she would go through this jumbo bottle of Tums, fruit-flavored Tums, every day. Our office building was next to a Costco, and she'd run over and buy herself a twin pack and go through them and just munch down on them. And because she was obsessed with taking this, with the calcium. And so she would, she was becoming very much in a hypercalcemic state. And she was always troubled with kidney stones, and she could never figure out why she was getting kidney stones but she was taking in all this calcium. Not the least of her problems was she was constantly neutralizing her stomach acid, which interfered with protein digestion. So we do strange things. We all do strange things. This was one of the stranger things I've ever seen. So anyway, I don't know whatever happened to her. I left there about 2004 and came south, and I've never heard from her again. So for all I know, she turned into a giant kidney stone. So, okay, now moving on. The minor nutrients, the minerals. That was unfair. She was pleasant to work with. So anyway, the minor minerals, the minor nutrients, the minerals, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chloride, and magnesium. The rest of the minerals we need are in trace amounts. Now, calcium and phosphorus show up in our bones. We don't want to have excessive amounts. We don't want to be underloaded here too. We can be, I've mentioned hypercalcemia a couple times. We can be hypocalcemic too, where we do not have enough calcium to function, for the cells to function normally. The calcium and phosphorus and magnesium show up in bone. Mostly calcium in our bones, but there is phosphorus involved in our bones and in our teeth too. Magnesium shows up in our bones. The phosphorus helps to form the calcium salt. Iron in hemoglobin. Iron is looked at, it's an element, but it's also looked at as a mineral in our diet. We need to have iron as the basis of the center of the hemoglobin molecule so that we can carry oxygen. Iodine, absolutely essential for producing thyroid hormone in our thyroid gland. Thyroid hormone regulates all of our metabolic activities. Without iodine, no thyroid hormone. We get our iodine in table salt. Iodine was added into table salt years ago. It was, let's see, I thought I had a note here in that. Oh, iodine was added to table salt in 1924. Prior to that time, the only way people got iodine in their diet was eating fish, seafood in particular. So there were vast areas in the US that people had problems with their thyroid because they didn't get adequate amounts of iodine. So we have to have a certain amount of iodine in our diet. We get it from salt, we get it from seafood, we get it in vitamins. Sodium and chloride. Sodium is the #1 ion in our plasma. Potassium is the #1 ion inside our cells. So we need sodium and potassium. Chloride is just watching. Chloride doesn't have much of a role to play, except it's the other half, sodium chloride. The two key electrolytes. Electrolytes are molecules that are in plasma and have a charge on them, a positive or a negative charge. So sodium chloride dissolves in water and has a positive sodium and a negative chlorine. They're electrolytes. And so sodium and chlorine are very, very important to us in here, only because the chlorine helps keep the sodium in balance, but that's the only job that chlorine has, because chlorine doesn't do anything else for us. So I'm going to introduce metabolism, and then we're going to call it a week here. A reminder that we don't have class on Tuesday. Monday and Tuesday are fall break, so there will be no classes on Monday and Tuesday. There will be no labs next week. The bone test opened up yesterday, I think, and it will stay open until the 15th or 16th of October. I think I'll make sure I'll move them all. I want to make sure they're all on the 16th. So you'll have 10 days to get around to the bone test. Um, so we will have no labs next week. We will have lecture next Thursday. So the Wednesday and Thursday classes will meet as usual, but there'll be no labs. Okay, metabolism. Metabolism is what we define as the sum of all biochemical reactions going on in the body at any time. Whether it's digestion of protein or fats or carbohydrates, whether it is breaking down fats or building up or putting fats back together again, breaking down polysaccharides and making glycogen, breaking down glycogen to get glucose. All of these biochemical reactions are metabolism. So yes, we have lab today, but it won't last long. I want to review. I want to go online and show you the bone box out of Loyola University, and make sure you get the link to it, because it's a great study tool to prep for the bone test. It's a very simple interactive review. So we are having lab. Okay. Chemical reactions in the body. The biochemical reactions are two types. Anabolic reactions. Anabolic means to build up. So we build large molecules from a small one. We make proteins from amino acids. We make glycogen from glucose. Those are anabolic reactions. They involve energy to do that. They end up storing energy. Glucose being built, glucose combining with other glucoses to form glycogen. When we link all these glucose molecules together, think of all the stored energy in the covalent bonds holding those glucose molecules together to make glycogen. The valence electrons in all those glucoses have a great deal of potential energy, so we can park energy in glycogen. We can park energy in stored fat. We can take carbohydrates and convert them to fat. We can take fat that we've ingested in our diet, and we take the fat and turn it back into triglycerides, and we park energy in that. So anabolic reactions allow us to store energy. Catabolic reactions break the covalent bonds that hold molecules together. Catabolic reactions break large molecules down to small ones. We break glycogen down to glucose. We break glucose down to carbon dioxide and water. We break proteins down to amino acids. And when we do so, we release energy. We end up with smaller molecules and a release of energy. Ultimately, when we break glycogen down to glucose and then break glucose down, we end up releasing energy as well as carbon dioxide and water. And that's what we get. That's catabolism. So anabolic reactions build up, catabolic reactions break down. And that is a great point to stop. So lab this afternoon, I'm going to show you how to use the bone box as a study tool for the bone test. I'm going to make sure that the bone test is open until the 16th of October. So that gives you plenty of time to prepare. If you are on the Sevierville campus, room 217 on the second floor is open. It's brought by campus police there in Maples, Marshall, and they'll unlock it for you. They know to do that. All the campuses are going to be open on Monday and Tuesday. There will just be no classes. So if you come to campus or for a class, it's not going to happen. There are no Zoom classes next week either. So Monday and Tuesday are fall break. We're definitely due for it. Let's see. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, okay, I'm going to get us out of here. And if you're in lab today, I'll see you then. And I think, it's been a rough week trying to get the lab to work with Zoom, but I think today you will enjoy what I'm going to show you. So, okay, I'll see you all later.